gonna be able to come back anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I just can't afford it.
Did I fail you, Bree?
Well, I mean, I've been coming here all this time, and I've been paying you all this money, and why do I still want a trick? Why do I still walk by a phone and want to pick up the phone and call?
Did you think I had some magic potion? You'd come in and tell me what the real problem was, and I would just take it away? What's the difference between going out on a call as a model or as an actress or as a call girl? You're successful as a call girl, you're not
Because when you're a call girl, you control it, that's why. Because someone wants you, not me. I mean, there are some jobs that I have regularly that want me, and that's terrific. But they want a woman, and I know I'm good, and I arrive at their hotel or their apartment, and they're usually nervous, which is fine because I'm not. I know what I'm doing. And for an hour, I'm the best actress in the world and the best fuck in the world. And
why'd you say you're the best actress in the world?
Well, because it's an act. That's what's nice about it. You don't have to feel anything. You don't have to care about anything. You don't have to like anybody. You just lead them by the ring in their nose in the direction that they think they want to go in. And you get a lot of money out of them in as short a period of time as possible. And you control it and you call the shots. And I always feel just great afterwards.
And you enjoyed it?
No.
Why not? You said there's nothing wrong with it. Why not, you said?
Well, there's a difference. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it morally. I didn't enjoy it physically. I came to enjoy it because it made me feel good. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. It made me feel, that I had some control over myself, that I had some control over my life, that I could determine things for myself. Oh, I don't know why I'm here. It's just so silly to think that somebody else can help anybody.
A modern day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Lay a Kick, a Coen brothers stand up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel, Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeak. There's so many new ways to revisit sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
When you see the letter K on the label for foods at the grocery store, it indicates that the item is designated as kosher, a complicated and controversial set of rules associated with the Jewish faith that align with the preparation or ingredients of food that deem it fit for consumption. The most famous rules are perhaps the avoidance of pork products, shellfish, and the separation of meat and cheese, meaning many popular American dishes are verboten. The first mention of the word kosher in marketing was in a Philadelphia newspaper in 1849, advertising certain cuts of beef provided by Thomas Newbold of Springfield, New Jersey. In 1911, Crisco became the first commercially sold product to be advertised as kosher. And as time rolled on, more and more products began to advertise their foods as being safe for consumption by those who keep a kosher household. And although plenty of kosher restaurants exist in the world, in 1998, a shopping mall in Buenos Aires, Argentina, shocked the world by opening an all-kosher McDonald's, leaving the cheese and sauce off its iconic hamburgers in a country known for its meat and cheese-heavy cuisine. McDonald's, which first opened in 1940 in San Bernardino, California, was later famously turned into a massive fast food chain by Ray Kroc in 1955, exploiting and expanding the restaurant's locations from 1 to over 40,000. But rapid growth, as we know, creates growing pains. Over the years, McDonald's has faced backlash due to e-clerk machines, replacing employees in the 1990s. McDonald's workers have long been struggling to increase the company's minimum wage, resulting in numerous strikes. And in 2015, McDonald's experienced their largest number of health and safety concerns, with workers in 19 U.S. cities filing no fewer than 28 complaints with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. OSHA, which sets safety standards in the workplace, was formed in 1934 to protect the growing workforce that boomed as a result of World War II. In the 1970s, OSHA introduced the Whistleblower Protection Program so that employees could file complaints about workplace conditions without facing repercussions. But unsafe workplace conditions weren't the only whistles being blown in the 70s. In 1971, New York City police officer Frank Serpico testified against his force for widespread corruption. Also in 71, military analyst Daniel Ellsberg released what's known as the Pentagon Papers to U.S. newspapers, providing evidence that the United States government decided to keep troops in Vietnam well after discovering that it was an unwinnable war. In 1974, Oklahoma lab analyst and union activist Karen Silkwood would blow the whistle to the Atomic Energy Commission, not OSHA, about unsafe conditions at Kerr-McGee Fuel Fabrication Labs, discovering that her own apartment was contaminated with high levels of plutonium. And 1 year earlier, in 1973, Mark Felt, known by most as Deep Throat, provided information to journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein that would uncover a conspiracy from the Republican Party to spy on the Democrat headquarters in D.C.'s Watergate Hotel. These 4 examples were immortalized in film with the movies Serpico, The Post, Silkwood, and All the President's Men. With the exception of 2017's The Post, these films were released during a period of film history known for a number of conspiracy, paranoia, and cover-up films, some of which were works of fiction, like 3 Days of the Condor, Marathon Man, and The Conversation. All the President's Men, perhaps the most famous from this period, was directed by Alan J. Pakula, who famously directed what's known as the Paranoia trilogy, consisting of All the President's Men, The Parallax View, and This Week's Film. Greetings, Starfighters. This is Ruined Childhoods, and on this episode, we celebrate Alan J. Pakula's 1970 neo-noir psychological thriller, Klute, which chronicles the disappearance of a chemical company executive, the sex worker with whom he is linked, and the detective whose investigation leads to activities that are less than kosher. Dan, do you ever wonder if you're being spied on?
Wonder? No, I know I'm being spied on. I have got how many friggin' cameras that somebody with the know-how could operate and spy on me with.
Very true.
I mean, we are using the internet to broadcast. I'm opening the doors and the windows to be spied on.
This is 100% true. Yes, that's right.
So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we are opening ourselves up to the possibility of infiltration just by existing, being on the internet. I know that Ronan Farrow has a new documentary series out that's all about how susceptible we all are to being spied on. And I saw one thing that he said, that every day we should restart our phones. That's the one basic thing that we should be doing.
Oh, okay.
And so
right.
I'm definitely going to start doing
I'll do that. Yeah. No, that's not a big ask.
Yeah. If Ronan Farrow tells me to do just that, no problem.
No questions asked.
No questions asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Ronan Farrow, his mom, Mia Farrow, I think is, I would say rightfully in line with these kind of paranoia films. I mean, Rosemary's Baby, you could consider to be, I mean, one of these types of, I mean, it takes a different turn than the rest of them.
Well, but you could also look at it as metaphor. So
100%.
Yeah. So it's kind of you don't have to take a giant leap to tie it in with stuff like 3 Days of the Condor or
right.
Flute.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So John, was this your first time watching Klute?
This was not my first time watching Klute. I watched it 6 months ago, maybe a little less than a year ago. I'm glad to have watched it again for this podcast because this is a movie that benefits from not also looking at your phone and doing other stuff while you're watching it. And I took that time this go around to make sure that I was fully focused on what was going on. Yeah. How about you? Was this your first time?
So it was not my first. It was my first time seeing it pretty much all the way through, though, as is per my usual, with the rare exception of Jack and Jill, I didn't watch it all in one sitting. And I also didn't want to be doing other things while I watched it. So that meant waiting until the evening after the kids are in bed after, I've done whatever else needs to happen. And so I've fallen asleep pretty much every time. This is a quiet film.
It is quiet. It is slow.
Yeah.
Except for when it is loud and intense.
Right. Exactly. But like it is mostly, and that's not that's not a criticism. It's just, it is the way it is. But, and honestly, like I have fallen asleep in those conditions watching like Con Air.
Right.
And I have, but like, just to kind of put it into perspective for anyone who's, I guess anyone other than you, John, because I don't think anyone else listening to this has ever been in my basement office, but
Fair.
It's a small room. I couldn't tell you the measurements, but it's not a lot by not a lot more. And it's, I have, because there's really nowhere else in the house where I'm allowed to put it. It is a like circa 2010 home theater system, surround sound in this little office with Blu-ray, not 4K, but still Blu-ray. And I have fallen asleep with explosions going off all around me. And, the Nicolas Cage. And so of course, watching Klute in those circumstances, which it has a lot of that build, and the build is there as you alluded to emphasize those moments of whether it's, action, whatever type of action it is. And it's not action in the traditional sense of action. And if I were to say violence, that would be somewhat misleading as well. But action is probably the best word for it. So I ended up watching it as I was, like sitting at my desk with the lights on, kind of just like, with something that I was working on, but not something that needed a lot of my attention, just like, editing a slide deck. And so I watched it that way. And, there are probably things that I missed, and I would love to, as with so many of the movies that we watch that are I would say pre-1980s for the most part, like I would love to see it in a theater. Like that's I feel like maybe that's kind of my end game in life, is to someday own a theater that like kind of just shows 70s movies. Cause I also feel like 70s movies have like the film has just the right texture. I mean, 60s as well, but it's that like the color is there and it feels so tangible. And it's some of these movies look so beautiful on Blu-ray and 4K, because it takes out so much of that, like that wash that you don't even notice is there until you watch it in a higher resolution, and then you really see the colors, but you also like really see the grain, and you really feel it's like it's film. It's Martin Scorsese cinema. So I would love to have a movie theater where I could sit, where not just me, of course, because otherwise I'd be out of business, but where people could go and, it's a revival house. It's not a new idea. I'm not inventing something, but like, I don't have one. Honestly, the movie theater that's in my neighborhood that's around the corner from me would be perfect for it, but I am nowhere near buying a movie theater.
But Dan, what if it was like a situation in that episode of like The Twilight Zone where you're the last person on the planet, and you've got you finally have the time to watch all the movies on like 35 millimeter, 70 millimeter, but like the projector lens breaks or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a time, my very own Time Enough at Last.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm glad that you brought this all up, because I feel like one of the things that I definitely thought a lot about during this, and I said this out loud so many times during this movie, was just, they don't make them like they used to. And it starts at like
Yes.
even before the movie starts, and you see like that old Warner Brothers logo,
Yes.
and you're just like,
Yes.
oh hell yeah, I am in for a ride.
The opening credits, like the lettering.
Okay,
Just the way,
here's what we're gonna do. Here, Dan.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Right now I'm gonna in post production we're gonna make this sound like it's on like an authentic like tape recorder. Okay, starting right now. Okay, so the opening has that little like handheld reel-to-reel recorder player, and you have like the hand that comes in and it clicks the button that starts it. And what I love about this movie is all of the tactile noises that you hear that we don't have anymore. When you press record on a recording device now, it makes no sound that's authentic. Bang. There's no like there's no sound of the reels going.
There's no mechanism, there's no gears, there's no cogs.
And in Klute, when the phone rings, it rings in such a way that no phones ringing now could ever emulate. Like,
you need...
Yeah.
Nothing works like that physical ring of the phone in that dead silent moment. Oh,
I feel like I could perfectly visualize the, like, hammer in the phone ringing the bell to make it ring. And that's something that I've never experienced before, that this movie brought me to in a new way.
Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I had, like, you know, I didn't say anything out loud, and I didn't have that, like, moment, I didn't have that deep recognition, but now that you say it, it's like, yes, those are the words that go with the feelings and thoughts that I had while watching it.
It's just so crispy, and the way that it works with all of the visuals and the that, like, rich film stock quality that this has. And because this movie also includes a lot of information about typewriters, and you know, there's this scene where they're showing a comparison of two typewritten, of like different typewritten letters next to each other that are projected side by side. There's so many things that I love about scenes like that, and that one especially is you hear the cha-chunk when it like goes to like the next slide.
The projection.
And it goes cha-chunk when it goes to the next slide where it's zooming in on everything. And also that scene, you hear the dialogue between the characters, but we haven't mentioned who's in this, what this is about yet. We'll get to that in a moment. But the real star of the show is the show itself. Like the look and feel of this movie is just like such a big draw for this. But you hear the dialogue between the two of them, and over that you see what they're seeing essentially. And it's not like how they make it now, where everything needs to be spoon-fed to an audience, where, okay, enter Jon Klute. He walks up to the guy who's the tech and says, hey, I'm here to see the typewriter samples, you know, and it's just like, okay, here we go. And, like, you just kind of go into the scene and you see just this beautiful visual. And
that's cinema. I mean,
yeah, I know, and
that's what cinema is.
And even with today's like best directors, the most unique directors, I feel like we're still not back to that place where we're letting the audience do more work, and we're letting the audience sit in the moment a little bit more. And there are some great directors these days, but I feel like there's just too much explaining that needs to happen for a modern audience.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think of some of like maybe the most recent, you know, filmmakers or films that have had that quality. And, you know, I do think it's something that in his own way Christopher Nolan has worked at, certainly with films like Memento and Inception. which I don't necessarily feel spoon-fed things, and I think left a lot of things open to discussion and interpretation.
Well, I think that with his movies, they're so complicated that if you were to spoon-feed the movies themselves, it'd be 7 hours long.
Well, yes, but I would say maybe Memento is kind of the best example and it's also a neo-noir film. So, and is actually, now that I think about it, very similar in tone to Klute in many ways. Mm-hmm. So, I think about that, but yeah, it's it's just much less common. Yeah. We don't have filmmakers telling stories on film using everything, because everything that you've just talked about is giving the audience information in some type of way. Even those like mechanical clicks, it's giving the audience, like, there's a sense of process.
Right.
And the audience is thinking about it, and like, okay, there was a sense of process. There's also like the mystery is, we see the hand, we don't know whose hand it is. At the beginning, we don't know whose voice it is.
Sure.
Especially if we're seeing this in 1971. I guess we recognize the voice.
Right.
But,
yeah.
But but the film has not established yet who is speaking.
And I do want to come back to what you just said about we recognize the voice. But first, I think it's probably a good idea to do a synopsis so that we can actually start getting into the meat of this film.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Well, let's synopsize. Let me get in my synopsized posture here. That's what you're hearing. After the mysterious disappearance of Tom Gruneman, a high-powered chemical company executive, an unsent letter is discovered in his office that is aggressive and sexually charged. The intended recipient? Bree Daniels, an aspiring New York City actress who pays the bills with her gigs as a call girl. The investigation into Tom's disappearance is left in the hands of his friend and small-town Pennsylvania police officer, Jon Klute, who sets up shop in a dingy makeshift apartment in Bree's New York apartment building that is ideal for recording her phone conversations to tape. These tapes are analyzed and then submitted to the man bankrolling the investigation, Tom's boss, Peter Cable, who is on edge during the entire investigation. Although Bree is apprehensive about answering Klute's questions, the persisting knowledge that she's being watched gives her the push needed to trust Klute and help him find Tom. But as the investigation moves on, those in Bree's life fall deeper into danger's path, and her own safety is put on the line. As she lets Jon Klute deeper into her life, will he be her knight in shining armor, or just another John? As Jon Klute, we have Donald Sutherland. As Bree Daniels, we have Jane Fonda. We have Charles Chaffee as Cable. I think I'm pronouncing that right. As Frank Legorin, Bree's ex and her pimp, we have the fantastic Roy Scheider. And in a role that would be described as a cameo, but she had not yet broken through yet in her iconic TV role as Edith Bunker, Jean Stapleton.
And it's funny because when you see the listings for this movie on streaming services, her name is it says Klute, Jean Stapleton, and it's like, really? How does that algorithm choose that name?
Well, and it just occurred to me, I was like, I think All in the Family might have premiered that year. Yeah, January 12th, 1971. So they shot it. It sounds like they shot it and she was, working character actress. And by the time it was going to be released, she's Edith Bunker.
So she does Klute and Cold Turkey.
Yeah.
And then the next day she goes to set as Edith Bunker.
I know, right? Crazy, right? Yeah, because Klute comes out June 25th, 1971.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. That's what I assume happened because she's got one scene. She have like one line.
She has a few lines.
A few lines. I mean,
Yeah.
she does make it. I don't know if, I mean, I like, she's great. And I assume she makes an impression. I don't know, for me, just because I see her and it's, Edith Bunker.
Right.
So yeah, but, and Roy Scheider.
Roy Scheider's great.
Are New Jerseyan and
Is
like
he?
Union. Oh yeah, well actually Orange is so born in Orange, but he went to high school in Maplewood. I'm trying to remember the name of the high school, but there's for some reason not just a few friends of mine have gone there, but also like Lauryn Hill went there, Zach Braff went there.
How about that?
Yeah, Columbia High School in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Star-making Columbia High School.
Well, and I believe that Roy Scheider also lived in our hometown of Cranford, New Jersey.
Really?
I remember hearing that somewhere.
Okay.
That he either lived or he maybe worked in Cranford, kind of like how Ray Liotta worked in Cranford.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
But
Dan, for anybody who's a new listener, Dan and I grew up in Cranford, New Jersey. It's technically a suburb of New York City. It's about 30, 45 minutes away.
Depends on traffic.
It's a commuter town. There's a train station in the center of town that goes to New York. And it is used frequently in television shows and in movies. And I was texting Dan last night because I was watching this movie that's direct to HBO Max called Sweethearts with Kiernan Shipka. And it not only was filmed mostly in Cranford, New Jersey, but it is set in the town of Cranford, Ohio. And I'm watching this and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I feel like I'm in like a bizarro world where it's like, it's the same place. Everything looks the same, but it's Ohio. And it's just weird because they keep on name dropping the town like all the time. Joel Kim Booster is in it. Caleb Herron is in it.
Okay.
It's a silly like college rom-com kind of a thing. But it was really, really weird. And I didn't even know about it until a buddy of mine who was an old college roommate sent me like an audio message to be like, just want to confirm that, you were from Cranford, New Jersey. There's this movie. I was watching it and I was like, wait a second. I'm pretty sure that's Johnstown. So, yeah, it's super weird when that stuff happens.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's used. I mean, Zach Braff, you mentioned before, Garden State was, filmed a little bit in Cranford.
Oh, in the home of someone I went to high school with. That was Natalie Portman's house in that. Yeah.
Oh, really? With all the hamsters or whatever it is?
Yeah,
Gerbils?
yeah. I don't remember her name, but it was someone who graduated the year after me.
Oh,
so.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
The Adventures of Pete and Pete was filmed there for its third season. Far From Heaven was filmed there. Guess Who with Ashton Kutcher and Zoe Saldana was filmed there.
It was, and it was called Cranford in that. Though
and it was called, it's
don't
super
remember
weird.
where it was supposed to be. I don't think they specified a state.
Yeah. It's really strange. They did we've posted pictures before of the Cranford movie theater on our Instagram at Ruined Childhood Spot. And there's even a shot of the exterior of the Cranford theater. And of course they like put like different movie titles on the marquee, which were puzzling and make no sense. But that movie theater very recently did something where it was like an evening with Armand Assante, and Armand Assante was there.
A Q&A with the star of Q&A.
There you go. So anyway, that's just a quick aside about our hometown because it was on my mind very recently.
And it's just weird. It's weird. Weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird. It's a very small town. And there are lots of other towns nearby that I feel would also make just as much sense, but they don't get as much action.
No, and I would say, and then we can move on. I will say that the downtown area of Cranford with the train tracks that, divide the town into north and south.
Yeah. the literal tracks that you could be on the wrong side of.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because we all know about people from the South Side. We are from the South Side.
Yeah, you know it.
But it's got like that little, like that clock in the middle, and there's like the little, steps where people can
cute.
sit and hang out. It's very, very like small town America. And by the way, it more so now than it was when we were growing up.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yes. But like really, I mean, they were, I'm almost positive named like the #1 downtown in New Jersey.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah. I don't know what the rubric was for that, but like, it's kind of one of those towns that it's got all these cute little stories. You know what it has versus other towns around us? I won't name any names. Westfield.
Okay.
No franchises, like, or not like, there's not a Gap. There's not a Starbucks.
There is a Starbucks.
But not in downtown Cranford.
Right. Yeah.
It's
downtown adjacent.
It's it's off the beat. There's one off the beaten path and there's one further off the beaten path. But in the center of town, you don't see like those brand names. I'm really trying to think.
There used to be the Pizza Hut Pizza Parlor.
Well, there used to be yes.
Which, I mean, it's kind of sad that that's not there anymore. And there used to be the Blockbuster Video.
Yes. But that's what I'm saying is more so now that Cranford has kind of eliminated those. I'm pretty sure there's still a Dunkin' Donuts, but again, it's out of the downtown area. Yeah.
Very interesting.
So I suppose also you can film there and you don't have to, that's not a concern.
Right.
So yeah, I suppose it also just has more of it. Like the other places in like don't have as much of a downtown like in that area.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
Cranny.
Yeah, we'll have to make like a letterbox list of
Cougar Spirit
movies filmed in Cranford, New Jersey. But going back to something that you mentioned about Klute, you were talking about the opening sequence, which is where we see the reel-to-reel tape recording, and that's playing, and you hear a voice, and you said that the audience would recognize the voice. But I would say Jane Fonda, this was one of the first, I don't think it's the first, but one of the first movies where she's kind of taking herself out of her kind of the persona that she had before.
Like
your
Cat Ballou.
Barefoot in the Park, your Cat Ballou, your Barbarella even.
Oh,
and
okay.
her voice is actually kind of in a bit of a different register for this movie.
Yes.
And I kind of love that. And, we talked about Jane Fonda a lot, clearly, on our Cat Ballou episode, which was not too long ago. And
our 9 to 5 episode, which was
watching
longer ago.
What's that?
And our 9 to 5 episode, which was a little bit longer ago.
9 to 5, Barefoot in the Park.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've covered a lot of Jane Fonda.
We sure have.
Yes.
And it'll still never be enough because she's just fantastic.
She is.
But for Klute, this is a period where she has found her footing in activism and is taking on acting roles more thoughtfully. And when we did our Cat Ballou episode, I talk about the documentary Jane in 5 Acts. I think that's what it's called. And it's a really great documentary that features, interviews from the time it was made with Jane Fonda, talking a lot about the different kind of eras of her life and talking about, her background and her family and the different sources of trauma, and her mother's story, which is very sad. And you see a role like Bree Daniels, and you're just like, right, this character is somebody who has a storied background, where you don't really get that as much with Cat Ballou. Right. You certainly don't get it with Barefoot in the Park.
No.
And we haven't talked about Barbarella, but I don't think that in the movie Barbarella you learn anything about her past really.
You know what? We'll be hitting B on the way back up
Yeah.
the alphabet, so who knows?
Sure. And also, she's been in like dozens of other movies up until this point also.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I would say those are the most prominent,
Yeah.
at least that I can think of. And you know, I mean, yes, her voice is kind of a little husky, and I think the reason why I said it, you know, it's recognizable is because to us now,
Sure.
it's much more that Jane
Yeah.
Fonda voice that we've heard
Oh, yeah.
before. So, but yeah, you make an excellent point that this is really kind of her breaking into kind of a new area of her acting career. I can't think of, I don't know if there's really anything that came before this that really matches this level of like complexity in terms of character. And this movie
Right.
is such a showcase
Yeah.
for her. Like she's not the title character, but
Which is odd.
no, I mean,
I don't
mean,
think that there should have been a title character to begin with.
well, okay, and you know, we'll come back to this later.
Yeah.
But it's much more a showcase for her than Donald Sutherland, who's wonderful in this. I love Donald Sutherland.
A very understated performance, very subtle,
Yeah,
but fantastic from beginning to end.
but it's also, and of course, also at this time, I mean, other than MASH, what else was he really known for?
That's a good point. Yeah, I don't know.
So, you know, in MASH didn't necessarily show as much of the serious side. This is a very different character than you know, Hawkeye Pierce. But it doesn't feel like, I feel like we've seen Donald Sutherland in other roles where, you know, he's kind of been able to show off a bit more. Like, I think he plays the character very well. It works that the character, I mean, he's a small town Pennsylvania cop.
Sure.
And he is like, this is my best friend.
Well, yeah. And, you know, we talked about kind of the opening sequence, but the first like scene, I guess the first two scenes are also just this incredible juxtaposition of the same room in this like, you know, suburban Pennsylvania home, which is absolutely gorgeous. And first you see a dinner party, and you see Tom, the person who goes missing, and, you know, kind of sharing glances with his wife, and they're having this party, and you see Jon Klute there, and he's wearing his little uniform, and he's just kind of in the conversation, and they're just laughing and stuff.
Yeah.
And then it like smash cuts to the same exact room, and it's the like they're questioning Tom's wife.
Yeah.
And revealing the fact that, you know, there was this typewritten letter in his desk that shows a very dark persona who is seeing escorts and being violent to them and verbally abusive. And by all accounts, we are led to believe that it's, you know, he's the one that wrote it, and he is missing. And this is the key to discovering, you know, his whereabouts, which is what, when they send, you know, Jon Klute to New York to investigate it. And it's an awesome way to start a movie. I mean, like, it shows you everything that this movie is right from the jump. It's so satisfying. Yeah.
It really does. And this is where that, you know, repeat viewing thing, you know, comes into play. And there were definitely a few moments as I was, you know, restarting segments where I would go back and I know I've seen, you know, these 15 minutes, but like, I want to watch it again and see what I missed.
Yeah. You know, after I watched it this time, I did even go back. So I watched it with my girlfriend, and she wasn't watching it for a small bit. I guess probably, I don't know, 60% of the way through she missed, and then she kind of saw the very end. And when it was over, she kind of had some thoughts about the movie and, questions about it. And that's when I was like, ooh, well, you got to see this scene and you got to see this scene. And it was scenes like, because she, like many others, is really into like true crime stuff and the investigation and forensics. And I had to show her the typewriter analysis scene, the scene when Klute is just writing on like a legal pad, kind of his like theories and thoughts and stuff about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you gotta see that. And then I showed her the scene with Bree when she's with her therapist, which is a great mechanism. And I know that Jane Fonda did a lot of improvisation in these scenes, which was incredible. And I think that this is like, because this is kind of her coming out as like a legit serious actor with a perspective and something to say, really showcasing her brilliance. Because the scene where she is talking to her therapist about Jon GUSH, who at this point they have begun a romantic relationship, which started off possibly, and it's like you could kind of see it in a few different ways. Possibly it was a way for her to assert dominance over him, using her sexuality. I'm sure it could be argued that she wanted to do it and then decided later to say something that would make him think that it was to have the upper hand. But she's talking about how now that they've entered into this physical relationship, she's experiencing something that she's never experienced before with her other romantic encounters, which were with John's, where she is enjoying herself. She's feeling a connection with her body. She is enjoying being part of it. And she's also not performing, which is something that she was doing with her clients.
Right. And can we just bring up like something that just a really nice touch in this? She has the one client who she just goes to like the back of, like, she goes to his like, like shop,
garment factory.
Yeah. Garment factory. And like he sets up a really nice dinner for her, and it's basically just like this guy who like doesn't have anybody. I feel like she kind of tells his story, and also like when she tells his story, you do kind of wonder like, all right, is she being honest or is she just telling Klute what she needs to tell him? But I took it as honest.
I think she's being honest because what she says is that it's never physical.
Right. He doesn't lay a hand on me.
Yeah, and one of the things that she tells her therapist, because like you said in the synopsis, like she's trying to become an actor. Yeah. And we see her audition for an acting role. We see her at like a modeling audition, which is a very harrowing scene in itself.
Yeah.
Beautifully shot. But when she's talking about when she is seeing her clients, she says like, during that hour, I'm the best actress in the world. And you see her really exercising this muscle with that particular client in the back of that garment factory, because she puts on a different persona. She's telling this story as she's doing essentially a striptease.
Yeah.
But she's just kind of becoming a different person and putting on this masterful performance. And you understand her as a person. And what we get from Bree Daniels and Klute that we don't get from so many sex worker characters in other movies is empathy. And we get a true understanding of why she's doing what she's doing. And never do we think that she is in the wrong to be doing what she's doing, because she makes such perfect sense when she talks about it.
Well, and also she's doing it by choice.
She's doing it by choice. She's kind of handling most of the appointments herself, with the exception of when she'll occasionally call Roy Scheider's character and say, "You got anything for me?"
Mm-hmm.
And Roy Scheider's character is kind of the entryway into the other side of how things could go, which is when we find out more about some of the, people that she had worked with in the past, other sex workers who were also, I guess, being managed by Roy Scheider's character.
Yeah.
And there's these great moments where we are hearing other people talk to Bree, and without them straight up saying, like, oh, this could be your life. You could be a junkie and dead. Because, that other one, she used to dress like you dress. And, but like, they don't say all of it. They just say the one thing that you can see what she's thinking as they're saying it. And there's like that moment where they're at that club and she kind of is a little wasted and she kind of flees over to Roy Scheider's character.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, is she slipping into that world? Is she trying to avoid becoming something that she's not ready to be? It's so good.
It really is. And we should note, of course, Jane Fonda did win the Academy Award for Best Actress.
Deservedly
for
so.
her performance. Yeah, 1971, I'm sure if I really sat down and tried, I could, or if I just looked it up, I could come up with the other nominees. Right. But yeah, you'd be hard pressed to find a more, even without the context of her doing lighter roles prior to this, the performance is masterful and nuanced, and she gives you, she makes you feel for and identify with this character that on the surface, a lot of audience members wouldn't feel a connection, wouldn't think they would connect with.
Definitely. And just real quick, the other nominees were Julie Christie for McCabe and Mrs. Miller, Glenda Jackson for Sunday Bloody Sunday, Vanessa Redgrave for Mary Queen of Scots, and Janet Sussman for Nicholas and Alexandra.
Okay, so I have seen one of those performances. Julie Christie is very good in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, but Jane Fonda
rules. Something else that I want to mention, and this is something that I know Jane Fonda talks about a lot, is the iconic Klute haircut that she has, which of course Jane Fonda has when she is in her famous mugshot. It's like that particular look. I was just watching on Max, there's this new yacht rock documentary, and I was like, oh damn, all of them had the Klute haircut. Like,
yes,
everybody looked like Bree Daniels and Klute at some point, except for Christopher Cross.
No,
he didn't have the long hair.
He could not pull off the.
But Kenny Loggins 100% had it.
Oh, definitely.
Every member of Toto.
Did Messina have it as well, or just Loggins?
They didn't talk too much about Messina.
Man, Messina gets the shaft in terms of.
Well, because once Michael McDonald came in, it was like, whoa, who's this Klute haired looking mother effer? No, he didn't really have the Klute hair either, but a lot of them did have the Klute hair.
No, yeah, and it's funny because I'm actually thinking about our parents' old photo albums from that time, because they got married in the 70s in 71. So I'm thinking about their wedding photos that we've seen, and I'm like, there's definitely Klute haircuts in those pictures.
Oh yeah, people definitely got the Klute.
And it sounds like a nickname for an STD.
It was like the Rachel.
I went out, I made some bad choices, I got the Klute, so I had to go to the doctor and get a shot. But no, it's like the Rachel.
It's like the Rachel. So anyway, clearly we both really like this movie.
Of course.
Don't want to spoil the ending, but it's because it's so worth it to watch it unfold. And to kind of see the movie play itself out. And then, yes, if you go back and watch it again, you're watching a totally different movie, knowing what is going on.
Yes.
And, you know, just being able to watch this movie and marvel in its beauty is a treat. And
I'm just gonna do it one more time. Cinema.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just think that those tactile elements to this are what make it so suspenseful, because like when you put in a sound effect of a phone ringing, it doesn't have the same impact of like you can tell that like this is the actual sound that this recording device would make when you press that button, or this is the sound of the phone bell ringing from that phone. Like you can feel it vibrate in the room.
Yeah. And of course what's really, you know, even more fascinating to think about is that it's not like these sounds were like recorded live, that it is, you know, that like these sounds are being created, and this is all in post. I imagine that, you know, these sounds are really at least being crafted in post production. And this is, you know, in the 70s when you're like doing so much manually.
Yeah. And you know that they're putting so much thought and love into everything that they're doing. Not to say that that's not being done now, but it's just done differently. And it's not to say that one thing is better than the other, but it is really satisfying when there's a movie like Klute and you can like really feel every element of it come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely sets apart. I know, like, yeah, things change, but it almost feels like the art of cinematic storytelling has been lost, at least in the mainstream sense.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, David Fincher, another filmmaker who I think, you know, has made the type of films that make you think, and has certainly, you know, has had that 70s style vibe in some of his films, like Seven, Panic Room. But okay, let's talk about what we're gonna do with this.
Yeah, no, and I'm not knocking any of our kind of present day directors, and also that is to say that, like you mentioned, Christopher Nolan and David Fincher, and it's like, you know, they came along really in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and that was like, I don't know, 4 waves of like directors after this era, which is, you know, Scorsese to a certain extent, Coppola to a certain extent.
What, are we talking about like waves?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's that whole like American zoetrope crew,
right,
of like that included Scorsese. So Coppola, Scorsese, Spielberg, De Palma.
But I feel like they came like a little bit after Pakula.
Yeah.
But like they were kind of like the next horizon.
Lumet was kind of, it was one absolutely. Of the elder, like Pakula. Well, Pakula, it was like maybe not as much of an elder statesman, but like Lumet, Frankenheimer, Sidney Pollack. Yeah.
They were the big ones then, and then kind of came Coppola, Scorsese, Spielberg in the kind of mid 70s, like right after.
I mean, early on, like Graffiti is 73, mm-hmm. THX is 71. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, Spielberg's like Sugarland Express, I think is what, 74.
I don't know the year for Sugarland Express.
Yeah, I mean, no, Spielberg comes on, like Mean Streets was, I think, 73.
Yeah, they are like right on the heels of this era, especially these like paranoia thrillers.
Yeah.
Which of course bleeds into, because when was Silkwood? That wasn't until,
Is it 79?
is it 79? I couldn't remember if it was late 70s or early 80s, but it was definitely later on, after All the President's Men, Parallax View. Have you ever seen Parallax View?
Silkwood, sorry, yes, but Silkwood was 83. I was
Okay.
thinking of China Syndrome, which is, I think, 79.
China Syndrome, which,
Another Jane Fonda.
Another Jane Fonda. I know you watched it recently.
Yeah.
I freaking love that movie.
It's so good.
Yeah, I really feel like this is my favorite genre.
This is your thing. And by the way, while we're talking about the 70s, I meant to say this before but got sidetracked. Can we talk about Roy Scheider's movies in the 70s?
All That Jazz.
All That Jazz. Jaws,
of course.
French Connection,
Klute.
Those are only the ones I'm thinking of off the top of my head. What else?
Okay, Roy Scheider and All That Jazz.
Sorcerer. Marathon Man.
Yeah, but Roy Scheider and All That Jazz. I just have to mention one thing about it, and that is the way that Best Supporting Actor that year should have gone to the joint that's hanging out of his mouth while he's taking a shower.
Yes.
Because it's like, hey, we're recording this right on the heels of Wicked coming out. Talk about defying gravity. This joint is doing some real heavy lifting here, and I am here for it.
I mean, Roy Scheider's performance in that film is something to talk about. Another movie, that movie I would show. Imagine, I've never seen that on a big screen. I would love to see that on a big. I would love to see that 4K sound and really. Although, man, that movie just hits hard, and the ending and just the whole idea. Not to just kind of go off on a tangent, but that Bob Fosse is basically making a movie about his own death.
It's so weird.
Oh, it's so weird, but I mean, Fosse. Yeah.
Anyway, what a great era. What a fantastic genre of film.
Yeah.
It makes me just want to watch some more, but Dan, we're talking Klute. This podcast, we talk about remakes and reboots and sequels and prequels and whatever. What would you do with this?
Well, I'm tempted to say remake it, and I'll get into why, but it's also hard to say remake it because I wouldn't want it to be remade unless you had a filmmaker who had a vision to make this film. And I don't you could make it and you could still set it in the 70s. And I think that there's a lot of reasons to do that. I don't know about setting it in modern day. I think it kind of loses a lot of the reason why you would do it. But honestly, I think my idea in remaking it would maybe be to start a series of the Jon Klute mysteries.
Oh,
The Jon, establishing, because that's kind of, it's almost like an alternate version of this movie would have centered more on Klute,
right,
and built him into a character that would have been carried into other films.
Yeah,
which to me is the only reason
that.
why you would call it Klute.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
So that you can have Klute returns.
Yeah, with the way that this movie ends, I feel like any subsequent Klute chronicle would have to address, Bree Daniels. I don't want to talk about what what happens in the end with
right.
Bree and with Klute, but it would certainly need to be addressed in some fashion. But yeah, I do like it. It's kind of it's almost like how Die Hard, he's really just a regular old cop, and then we see him in this very weird situation, and then every other time we see him, he just is in more and more crazy situations.
I mean, it's kind of like a Oh, wow, I totally, lost the thought. But the idea and the thing about, it's kind of also similar to like kind of the Alex Cross concept that has been, with the Morgan Freeman films and then the Tyler Perry, and now there's somebody else doing it for a series. But I like the idea of, and I don't know how you make this work. And like Donald Sutherland kind of made it work. And I don't know how you make this work when this is the character that you're basing the series around. But kind of the idea that this guy is kind of neutral. Yeah. And that his ability to just kind of blend into the background and pass through is what enables him to do things. Whereas McClane's more like, in your face about things.
Yeah, he's a wise ass. I'd say it's more similar to, Elliot Gould in The Long Goodbye.
In The Long Goodbye, yeah. But even not with not as much character as him.
Right, yeah. Well, that's something that we don't really get a lot of is Jon Klute's backstory. And we only get glimpses of his personality from time to time when he's, there's the scene where they're at that, that outdoor market and there's barely any dialogue in it. And you just kind of see them buying fruit together, which is a very romantic moment. And that's coming right off of Bree at the therapist talking about how she wants to kind of sabotage this relationship so that she can, not feel feelings essentially. Right. And then we see her like making eyes at this guy and just really admiring him and just wanting to like be close to him. Anyway.
And he's just kind of like, he's the kind of guy who every moment you see him in his like, okay, what is it? I feel like almost everything is what is the like morally, like what is the right choice to make next, which is also what makes him like, jumping into this love affair with Bree brings out that character. And by the way, just to kind of, and to go back to another scene that I thought was fantastic. And it's when she's kind of, ribbing him and they're in her apartment and it's before they've slept together and like, she's flirting with him, but she's also like really busting his chops. And he's just like, and he just goes, all right, come into the bedroom with me. He's like, sit down on the bed.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, all right, this is okay. I'm into this. And then he's like, there's somebody on the roof.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so good.
And man, also the art direction of like that apartment and like which, so many New York City apartment buildings have those, the top floor.
It's her apartment from Barefoot in the Park.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I knew it looked familiar.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Isn't it wild how in such a short period of time she would go from being in Barefoot in the Park? Because what year was that? Like 63?
67? 60?
Was it that much later?
Was it 65 maybe? No. I'm trying to think. Barefoot in the Park.
Because it's really not that...
67. Yeah.
It's 67.
Yeah,
that
67.
is no time at all to go from that like, cheeky relationship rom-com-y kind of a vibe with Robert Redford to going to like this. That's... If you think about like how long ago certain movies came out now that feel like really current, it's like, oh no, that was 10 years ago. That was 15 years ago.
Well, but also then, the older we get, I feel like it's more that it like, Prestige is a recent movie. It's like, wait, what?
I was thinking about the movie Creed before, and it's like, that's an old movie. That was almost 2015 or something.
2015. It's almost
so it'll be 10 years old soon. Like that's wild to me.
So and it's like that Jane Fonda definitely like really made that transition quickly, but I also don't know that she's like the only. I feel like there's other actresses who have done like a similar.
Oh no, absolutely. But I mean, could you think of movies that are? I mean, of course, yes,
But,
there are movies that
yeah.
are more tonally different, but like those two movies are so tonally different. It's wild.
But even when you add into the mix Barbarella and Cat Ballou, there's
Right.
that's all three of those. There's more connective thread with the three of those, definitely Cat Ballou and Barefoot,
Yeah.
than there is with Klute. Klute's a major shift.
Well, also, when you look at a movie like Barbarella, you know, that's with her husband at the time, and she's kind of going through this whole thing trying to figure out who she is and what she's supposed to be doing with her life and her career. And then Klute is like post-divorce from that dude and discovering activism. And I don't know if she was with her second husband at this point, but I don't know if they were together, maybe not married, but this, you know, she met him just doing activism and doing activism. That's such a weird thing to say, but like,
you know, doing some activism.
Yeah, protesting and going to rallies and standing up for what she believes in. And, you know, this is, she's discovered this part of her personality in such a big way. And to do a movie like Klute, which it's not directly about any type of, you know, political stance or movement, but it's showing her chutzpah and introducing the world to like the Jane Fonda that you don't mess with.
If I may, John.
You may.
I think it is connected to a movement because this is also really, you know, the era of, I mean, Jane Fonda was at the forefront of the whole burn your bra thing and like owning your body, owning your sexuality, you know, liberal women who controlled their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it, you know, how many years later and we're, you know, fighting that fight still, but hey, you know, but she was at the forefront of that movement, and this movie is very much about that. She's a call girl who like is doing things on her terms. She's not, you know, she's not the, you know, the girl she worked with who's strung out and basically turns tricks just to get heroin, and that's the chain of events. But she's, you know, she's trying to make a living as an actress, and she does this on the side because, as she tells her therapist, she's in control.
Yeah.
She gets something out of it. It's never anything like dirty or desperate.
Right.
So yeah. Anyway, John, what's your idea?
I'll get to that in a second, but one quick thing I want to say jumping off of that. And we, you know, we've been talking a lot about, you know, Jane Fonda playing this sex worker character who takes agency over her own choices and her body. And also this is they don't make them like they used to thing. So just bear with me for a second. But I just watched the sex worker film of the year, I guess you can say, Anora.
Okay.
And everybody's talking about how great it is. And I don't know if it's because I watched it after just watching Klute, but I feel like I was let down by this movie. And this is another sex worker who I think they want to give the impression that she's making her own choices and she stands up for herself and she's not beholden to anybody, but it does not come across that way after you watch Jane Fonda in Klute. And perhaps it would have been different if I watched them in the reverse order or had more time in between them. But it kind of let me down. And also the movie Anora is a movie that just goes like bam, bam, bam. It just keeps on going and going and going and going and going. And it doesn't just stop and take those beats and let any suspense build. Which is another thing about people trying to find somebody who's disappeared. So, anyway.
I haven't seen the film, but, I looked at the Letterboxd reviews of it because, I'm more and more interested. I've been looking at those more and more frequently and just seeing like, okay, the people who actually take the time to go and post on Letterboxd, like, and like that alone doesn't, make their word gospel.
Right.
But I'm just interested in seeing those responses, and it's felt like a very kind of like most like either the ecstatic approval or just kind of like that middling range. And I don't know. And also, I don't know when I'll be like, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and that's her best friend's name is Honora. And I don't think I can watch this movie. And
for what it's worth, she goes by Annie in the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, what I would do with this movie, honestly, I would, like you were saying before, I would, I don't know, program a series, like a festival series, a festival style series, I guess, of all of those old 70s, early 80s, maybe even late 60s paranoia films, the best quality prints possible in a theater with the best quality sound possible, and just like get people together and have everybody just facing forward in the darkness, watching these beautiful, rich movies. I mean, how badly do you just want to see Gene Hackman wailing on the sax in the Conversation, on the big screen, and then the next night you see Klute, and then the next night you see the Parallax View. And oh man, I mean, the Parallax View is not my favorite by any stretch, but like, it has its moments.
Yeah, I was just about to say that it does have its moments.
Warren Beatty, there's cool Space Needle stuff. There's that.
Yep, absolutely. It's the
ending is really interesting.
If you live in Seattle and not a town like Cranford, New Jersey, that pops up in film all the time. It's exciting to see the Space Needle.
I wonder, have more movies been filmed in Seattle or Cranford, New Jersey? I bet it's close. I bet it's closer than you think.
Yeah, I mean, filmed in probably very close, if not Cranford in the lead. I mean, set in Seattle probably wins, but
set in, yeah.
So I mean,
but like Toronto filling in, or even Vancouver, filling in,
That would be an interesting, I'd be interested to see those statistics. Do we include TV shows?
No, just movies.
Just movies.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm like Parallax. I got Parallax View, Singles, Sleepless in Seattle.
Yeah.
Like, what else was actually filmed here? Oh, 10 Things I Hate About You.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Harry and the Hendersons, I believe, was actually filmed in Seattle.
In Seattle proper?
In Seattle proper.
Okay.
I'm fairly certain I remember reading that. So that's 5.
Well, we may be talking more about that one when we're going back down the alphabet. But right now we're going up the alphabet, A to Z. We'll be doing Z to A after. And this has been our K film. Dan, before you tell everyone what our L film is going to be, I want to thank everybody for listening or watching if you're on YouTube or Spotify. Please email us, ruinchildhoodspot@gmail.com, if you have an amazing idea about how you'd want to bring back Klute or any of the other movies that we've talked about. If you have a movie that is that fits into our alphabetic scheme, we're going A to Z, then Z to A. We're trying to be as alliterative as possible. Klute,
not always possible.
It's not always possible. Or there's just maybe a movie where it's just like, well, we got it. It's just like for K, I just really want to do Klute. It's that like one word title, bam, Klute. But yeah, email us ruinchildhoodspot@gmail.com. Go to ruinchildhoodspot.com for all of the other stuff. And rate and review us on all the things that you want to rate and review us on. And Dan, let's talk about L.
All right, so for L, we are, John and I love the 1970s and
Sure do.
film. So we are going to be taking a look at 1970s, as in of the year 1970. The Landlord, directed by Hal Ashby, who we have talked about previously, definitely in our Harold and Maude episode. Did we do any other?
Being There.
Being There, yes. I knew there was another one. And starring Beau Bridges.
I mean, for Hal Ashby, let's see, what else do we have? There's The Last
Shampoo.
Detail. What'd you say?
The Last Detail. Shampoo, right? Did he direct Shampoo?
Yes, he did do Shampoo. That's right.
Yeah.
Shampoo is another weird Warren Beatty one.
Yeah, I liked it. I like Shampoo.
Did he do... Who did Coming Home?
Oh, yep. That was Hal
Coming
Ashby.
Home?
He did
Another
Coming
Jane
Home.
Fonda.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think her other Oscar was for Coming Home.
I believe you're right on that as well. Yeah.
Man, look at that. So, unfortunately, Hal Ashby did not have as long of a career as we would probably have liked, but we'll see if we can get through all of them by the end of this podcast run.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, what a collection of films. I mean, just you talk about Being There and Harold and Maude
Classics.
alone.
And I've heard so many great things about The Landlord, and I'm really excited to watch it. It'll be my first time, and when it comes to satirical movies that are shining a mirror on society, holding a mirror up to society, shining a light on society, combine those two. Shining a mirror,
using a mirror to reflect a light upon society.
There you go. It's something like that. But no, I'm really excited. But I guess there's not much more to say than, Dan, as you are chasing a peeping Tom through the weird ins and outs of a dark, creepy building, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.